So maybe I am becoming a musicals fan? Hey, I'm Amy and welcome back, and today I will be checking Swing Time off the 1001 movie checklist. If you don't know what the 1001 movie checklist or 1000 movie challenge is, it is basically a challenge I've given myself to check every single film off the 1001 movies you must see before you die book. So far, I've checked 190 films off the list. If you want more, you can check out a playlist up there with every single film that I've checked off so far, along with an intro video. This episode of the 1000 movie checklist is also produced by one of my patrons, Javier Hernandez. If you would like to learn a little bit more about how you can become a producer for the 1000 movie checklist or just a patron, there are links in the description down below to my Patreon page. As always, let's get started with a short summary. A performer and gambler travels to New York City to raise the $25,000 he needs to marry his fiancée, only to become entangled with a beautiful, aspiring dancer. I almost always feel like I say I'm not a fan of musicals, but every time I watch a musical for this challenge, I enjoy it. I think it's mostly the musicals that are from the early days of cinema, like the 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s. I was not a huge fan of Les Mis, but that is also more of a modern musical. But I also really just love all of the movies from like the 1920s to even before 1920, like the 19-teens, 1890s, all the way up into like the 1950s, because there is something that feels very comforting about them, even though they were very much filmed in the studio system era of Hollywood, where there was some very tight restrictions, but that also is kind of why I like them, because a lot of the directors had to find creative ways to circumvent all of these censors. And where this film really shines, and what I absolutely love about it the most, is its big musical and dance numbers, especially the dance, because the two stars of this film are Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers. Swing Time was their 6th film together out of 10. The final one that they did, it was supposed to be Judy Garland and Fred Astaire, but Judy Garland had to drop out, so Ginger Rogers stepped in, and it was their only film together in color, which I think is insane. And also, fun fact about Swing Time, Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers put their all in, not just to Swing Time, but into all of their films, but in this one in particular. It took them nearly 50 takes to get the climactic Never Gonna Dance sequence that ended with Ginger Rogers' feet bleeding. And because the two of them did so many films together, they had such a great chemistry and rapport already, and you can definitely see that in this film. They are so synchronized and their choreography flows so smoothly together. Granted, there are some dances that did have 50 takes to get done, but they still work together so well and do such an amazing job. And while I really loved the dance sequences, the story was a little bit lacking and in some places a little off to me. There's that bit at the beginning with the pant leg cuffs that kind of went on for a little bit too long, as the members of his troupe did not want him to go and get engaged. And then there's the whole thing with getting the $25,000 for his engagement money. Maybe I missed something, but there were so many times that Lucky and Pop were talking about,
he can't hit $25,000, otherwise he has to go back and get married. But it's like, he could just, take the money and run. Like, he doesn't have to go. Does he have to go? Especially after he meets Penny and he doesn't want to get married. So it's like,
I don't know, there was that, it was very weird to me that it was like, he has to get this money, and if he hits this a certain amount, he can't stay. He has to go back and get married. I don't know. It was just, maybe that's just how things worked back in the 1930s, but that was a little bit weird to me. And a lot of Lucky's scheming for this dowry to marry his fiancée gives Swing Time the feel of a predecessor to a modern romantic comedy. I'm not a huge fan of romantic comedies. If you've been around my channel for a while, you know this. I just really do not like a romantic comedy. But there were certain aspects of this film that I really enjoyed that are in romantic comedies, but also they were just kind of a little too heavy-handed on the romantic comedy side. Things like Lucky going 100 180 degrees from focusing on getting the money to marry his fiance to being so attracted to Penny, flirting with her and following to the dance studio where she works, pretending to be bad at dancing just so she can teach him and he can be with her. Then after that, he saves her from getting fired by showing that he actually is very good at dancing. They fall in love super quickly, and Lucky keeps his plans of earning the $25,000 so he can marry Margaret a secret from Penny. And then one particular scene that I thought was so adorable but also quintessential romantic comedy is right before Penny's big dance number. She's very, very nervous and goes to his dressing room, and the way she asks him how her dress looks is very adorable and sweet and romantic comedy-esque.
Oh, how do you like my dress?
Oh, that's nice.
And there is one glaring thing that if you have seen Swing Time, you are probably furiously typing in the comments that I have not talked about, that I need to talk about. And if you have, I know you're complaining about it because you haven't watched this far in the video. That is the Bojangles Blackface dance scene. Yes, I will talk about that for just a little bit, only because there is some historical context to it, and we all know I love my film history, and that's basically what this entire series is built upon, and I don't really do it as much, but we're going to talk about it a little bit today. So, blackface was a very common thing, and I'm not using this in any way to apologize or say that using blackface is okay, because it is extremely racist. This is just the history of blackface and how it came to be in film. Blackface was originally very common in vaudeville stage acts where white people would paint their face black to represent black characters, and then that evolved into being on television and in motion pictures when these vaudeville acts switched to being in moving pictures versus being solely on stage. In childhood, Fred Astaire was also part of a vaudeville act with his younger sister. They toured the country and were widely considered one of the best vaudeville acts. The use of blackface in film was slowly starting to get put to an end after Birth of a Nation and the reaction to some of the racism within that film. After that, it was used mostly for broad comedies or ventriloquizing blackness in a performance within the film, which is what happens in Swing Time with the Mr. Bojangles sequence. And this whole sequence is Fred Astaire paying homage to his roots within dance as well as within the vaudeville performing arts. I hope that doesn't seem like I am apologizing for the use of blackface or saying that it's okay because it's something that they used to do back in the 30s, because this is closer to the time of when blackface was being phased out of film. At the end of the 1930s, at the beginning of the 1940s, was when blackface was really starting to be considered a racist prop almost within film, and it was being cut off from being used altogether. And finally, it's time for the clip. The clip I chose was my absolute favorite scene in the film and what really just pulled me into this film. And that is all I have for Swing Time. As always, this is just my opinions, but I'd love to know yours in the comments down below. Let me know what your favorite musical is, or even out of the 10 Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers films, which one is your favorite? If you want to know which films I've already watched or just follow my progress along in general, there is a link to a Google Doc in the description down below with every single film I have checked off so far, or you can check the list on my Letterboxd. I'm also an Amazon affiliate, so if you'd like to start the challenge for yourself, watch the film I talked about today, or watch the film I'm going to be talking about next time, there are links in the description, and if you purchase anything from those links, I will get a small percentage that'll help make this channel even better. For the next movie, I had this one picked out because I believe it is an anniversary of the film, but I feel like it's even more apropos that I talk about it after talking about it in this film, and that is D.W. Griffith's Birth of a Nation. But thank you guys so much for watching. I really truly do appreciate you, whoever you are. Let me know here in the comments down below, and let's be friends. If you enjoyed this, leave a like and subscribe if you're new, because I love talking these movies, TV shows, filmmaking, mystery, all that fun stuff, and I'll see you next time. Bye!